Top 5 threats, according to EMEA, the European Agency for Network and Information Security, relate to malware, web-based attacks, web application code injection attacks. We then have bot networks and then DDoS. So what we've seen in the last year is those threats remain the top 5 concerns across Europe. So the tactics are changing slightly. They are more targeted than ever. What we're seeing is there is a big drive to focus on data. So data theft, data leakage, elements of data destruction, all of those things relate to those data. This is why we have these instances. Obviously with the exception of DDoS. DDoS is an availability style attack. But the other, those top 5, the real motive for the attacker to be successful in an organization is to use those threats to target data and to, again, compromise that data. It does change. We have to mature over time. So perhaps in the last 5 years, we've seen a big focus on moving away just from infrastructure security and compliance security to really looking at perhaps identifying breaches. So breach detection systems have become quite common around organizations looking at their next requirement. Understanding malware, the execution of malware forensics teams, we're seeing this. We also see it being a big drive towards threat intelligence feed collection, and looking at certain types of TTP, so techniques and procedures, as part of that threat intel. But then we're also looking at organizations performing threat modeling exercises. So this is actually taking all the threat information and tailoring it and making it relevant to your organization. So these are all things that we're seeing organizations do where perhaps they haven't done that much in the past 5 years. But then we actually see organizations moving to this risk-based data-centric strategy where they're really putting their assets in the middle, focusing on protecting those assets, looking at the security around those assets. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's your spend in security. Most organizations will have a specific budget that they can spend on security. So obviously you focus on preventing most security incidents from occurring that typically focus on those targeted assets. So it's that balancing game of how much you can spend, your return on investment, and where is the right investment to make. And what we're seeing is some organizations are continually renewing some of their technologies, perhaps not turning on some of the new features and new enhanced features. One of the issues is they perhaps don't have the right resources, perhaps they don't have the right skill set. And that's a common issue we've identified in the information security space, is that it's really hard to get people with that experience and that exposure to these types of technologies. So it is a balancing game. I mean, from a perspective of understanding the risk and understanding the absolute impact of a security incident, this is where you need to start justifying perhaps to an exec team, start using metrics that are available today on perhaps why you need to be spending more, perhaps why you need to be adjusting your budgets or spending on different types of technology. This is setting some urgency around data protection. So perhaps where organizations have overlooked that before, they can no longer turn away from this. It's a law. Okay, most organizations, and I mean their executive team are not going to highlight. They're not going to be non-compliant with legislation. They have to consider legislation. So this sets the urgency, and this is good. I mean, if you're in the information security role, if you're a CISO, a security officer, security manager, you should be using this as a means to set some urgency around data protection. If you don't have any data protection controls, this is perhaps your first discussion you can have with the exec team on why you need those controls. Once you set the urgency, then obviously going around and actually pulling in the right type of controls is important to meet that legislation, to prove that you're not negligent around this. So from an authority's perspective, they're going to really look into an organization that's had a breach and find out if there's negligence, gross negligence at hand. And that's where you need to be able to highlight and again, show some good value back to your board that you're actually being proactive about this. Look at the risk-based data-centric strategy. Really consider what is your most valuable asset. Start considering your types of controls you've put around them. Of course, a firewall, an IPS, they're not always relevant and can help you with data protection. And of course, they're not going to help you with an insider threat. We're seeing insider threat being, again, a very, very key talking point this year. In terms of the threat landscape, it's now in the top 10. It's number 7, according to EMEA. So this is something that organizations are really focusing on as well. But yeah, from that perspective, again, pulling it around the data, if you've got an insider threat, an external threat, they're going after the data, that's the commodity item, that's the item that has that value, then you need to consider the controls around them. So really start focusing on that data, where it is, where it resides. Perhaps consider your cloud computing and your mobile strategy, where the data resides on those devices and in those applications and services that are now offered. Consider all of those things, data sovereignty, data destruction, all these things need to form part of that discussion. But it all starts from understanding and identifying where that data resides.